Yeah, paying to talk is ridiculous. It's a nice subject to start us off on.
So, it's been about 9 months since Valve took action against the swarms of cheating bots in Team Fortress 2. This was a long overdue fix for a problem that persisted for nearly 8 years, birthed from the wake of TF2's worst update, Meet Your Match. If you want the details on all of that, go check out my previous video. But as a follow-up to this, I'm currently working on a short series of videos where I go through all of TF2's present-day problems and offer potential solutions, as a way to wrap up this series of criticisms towards Valve and the state of the game. Now that the bots are gone, we can finally focus on TF2's other problems, some of which are glaringly apparent. To tide you guys over, because episode 1 is taking a little longer than I thought, I figured I'd make an episode 0, a pilot, covering one simple request that I think an overwhelming majority of us would support. The number one change that should happen, must happen immediately, is the unmuting of free-to-plays. I spoke about this in my last video, but as a brief refresher, back in 2020, during the thick of the bot crisis, bots would often spam various obscenities in game chat, including a colorful variety of racial slurs, and also ear rape over voice chat. Valve didn't really give a shit about this, or bots in general, for years beforehand. They just let bots ravage the game without really doing anything. But then, a handful of game journalists whined about bad words in video games. Valve lets racist bots run rampant in Team Fortress 2. Not exactly good optics at the time, and Valve is very sensitive about public perception. Then, and only then, a few days after these articles came out, Valve took action to quell the bad press. But, instead of doing something about the bots, they instead muted free-to-plays, presenting this as a solution to cut down on the chat spam. New players could no longer use text chat, no longer use voice chat, or even use in-game voice commands.
Which, again, is like the stupidest decision ever for a company to make. Seriously, you're telling me your $1 million solution is muting every single free-to-play? Not only do cheaters actively pay for programs that they use, they also wouldn't mind paying a small tax fee if it means they'll continue spamming their comments and everything else. It's just designed to punish people who can't afford certain privileges, which is like the worst thing you can do to a community. I mean, what better way to tell your game that it's super dead than to mute the little free function and put a paywall behind it? I love you, Valve, but you sometimes know how exactly to piss me off in the most unconceivable ways possible.
Without first paying a fee. By buying something from the in-game store, basic gameplay features like calling for a medic, calling out a spy, or even asking for help became paywalled. And hilariously, muting free-to-plays did absolutely nothing to prevent chat spam, because bot hosters could easily buy premium TF2 accounts for pennies apiece and then bypass the useless stopgap.
Indeed.
Completely ineffective solution. What, you don't believe me? You don't remember? Well, let me remind you. By the way, there was no reason to limit voice commands like calling for a medic. You can't even spam voice commands. They're rate limited. This decision made absolutely no sense. And the cherry on this shitty sundae is that muting free-to-plays also means that free-to-play votes do not count. Yes, free-to-play's votes for, say, a vote kick do not count. The game still shows that they voted, but their votes aren't counted in the final tally. So ultimately, muting muting free-to-plays only further enabled bots, because it made them harder to kick. All of the bots had premium accounts anyways, so they could vote in their own favor, and the entire swath of free-to-play humans couldn't even kick the very bots the mute was supposed to deter. This was a massive backfire that only hurt TF2 in more ways than one. An absolute fucking joke. Now listen, I don't know if Valve genuinely thought that this mute would prevent chat spam, or in reality, this was probably a quick solution to appease the rabid game journalists. If they genuinely thought this would cut down on chat spam, that just shows how out of touch Valve became with their own game. But I seriously doubt that they don't know their own Pandora's box they opened with Steam, and that acquiring premium accounts for abusive purposes is easier than picking an apple. Muting free-to-plays doesn't solve any problems. As such, this should have been reverted immediately, years ago. But Valve didn't revert this immediately, or like a month later, because that would of course made them look bad in the eyes of the shitty journalists that were at the time given way too much sway in public discourse. But now, with the bots gone, there is no reason for free-to-plays to stay muted. Also, another reason for the mute that not that many people address is the money. It's not pennies. Quite a few new people bought something just so they could speak, but it goes well beyond this. The free-to-play mute absolutely translated into more dollars per player over the long term. Why? Well, initially, free-to-plays only had limited backpack space and they couldn't trade. But these two things don't impact gameplay. So before the mute, players had no reason to click on the in-game store. But the more inconveniences that free-to-play games burden their players with, the higher the chances of them buying in. With the addition of features that detract from gameplay, this increases the pressure for players to buy in. They reluctantly buy something once, almost out of necessity, but then get exposed to all of the other shiny toys. And the gambling, which vastly increases the chances of that player becoming a returning customer. It's not just the initial purchase, but everything that could come afterwards. And again, before the mute, free-to-plays had no reason to click on the in-game store, but now it's practically a requirement if you want the full, proper TF2 experience. It's just evil. Muting free-to-play accounts only serves to punish real players, specifically newer players, and hurt their experience. This also jeopardizes TF2's future. I'm not exaggerating here, this is true. If we seriously want TF2 to stay alive, the only way that's gonna happen is with fresh blood. Sure, us old heads are gonna stick around for the long haul, and the game is free, so the barrier for entry is low, but the problem is player retention. We may have this constant flux of new players into Team Fortress 2 because the game is free, but if they don't stick around, we're fucked. Over time, TF2's player count will keep going down, unless that fresh blood decides to stick around. And of course, player retention is not a new problem for Team Fortress 2. Since launch, the game has had its fair share of issues when it came to being friendly to new players, be it piss-poor optimization, lack of information for new players, all of these things I'll talk about in that series of videos. But the last thing Valve should have done was paywall basic gameplay features. This was yet another blemish on top of a long list of problems that makes TF2's initial player experience utterly miserable, which only pushes new players away. Imagine denying, let alone paywalling, player communication in a team-based game. Hell, try it out yourself. I got a brand new account, I hopped into TF2 just to see what this was like, and it just sucks. You can't call for a medic, so you just die. You can't call out spies, so your teammates die. You can't ask for help, you can't communicate, you can't even contribute to the conversations and fun camaraderie in the text and voice chats. This was utter fucking misery, and I only played for a couple of hours. You experience this within minutes of booting up the game for the first time, and that's
another video from what was it? Uncle Dane that stated how TF2 is kind of lying to you about there being quote unquote teamwork and working together is somewhat true, but at the end of the day, there is still communication allowing for the team to shine through and build the community. So if you remove that feature, it just makes it absolutely frustrating and impossible for this community to thrive. It's like they're actively trying to destroy TF2. like silence it indefinitely, make it disappear. Which at this point I'm beginning to believe might actually be their motive. Just rub off the cash cow, get as much money as possible, and then just call it a day.
Coming from me, someone who's been playing the game for almost 15 years and already knows how everything works. Imagine that you just installed the game and this is your first ever experience with TF2. My god, this isn't some novel situational issue. The free-to-play mute has negatively impacted every single person that has approached the game since 2020. And it's still happening to this day. Players have been complaining about the free-to-play mute for years, asking for this to be reverted for years. And it's time that we put our feet down. Player communication is an integral part of the TF2 experience. By design. It has been since day one. Valve very intentionally baked in multiple ways for players to communicate and interact with each other. Team Fortress 2 is one of the last bastions of completely open player communication, and the last thing we need to do is sit idly by as it remains gagged. Continuing to paywall player communication as a non-solution to a now non-existent problem is just ugly. It's insulting, and it's crazy that we've put up with this for so long. Valve needs to unmute free-to-plays. Now. We should be demanding this from them now. And yes, I know the discourse is now tainted with my presence, and the only real way this makes enough noise is with more wholesome, larger figures stepping in, and now that I'm here, they'll want nothing to do with this. But I'm also not just gonna sit here with my thumb up my ass and not say anything. And also, none of this halfway bullshit of only giving back voice commands. We shouldn't be making concessions with the company that took away basic gameplay features that were available for 10 fucking years. No other video games paywall player communication. If other developers did this, it would be a joke. They would be laughed out of the room, utterly annihilated and bullied until they changed it. And anyone defending it would and should be labeled as insane. $5, 99 cents, 1 penny. It doesn't matter how much it costs. This should not be happening. Full stop. Oh yeah, and for you Valve bootlickers out there, this isn't some monumental task like building a better anti-cheat. Unmuting free-to-plays would take 5 minutes, nearly zero work. It's barely an inconvenience, literally a toggle that Valve needs to flip. Free-to-play communication caused 0 problems for 10 years beforehand. There is simply no defending this. It's bullshit that this ever happened in the first place. Valve, unmute free-to-plays. That's it.